What's up, guys? We're here with Benchwarmers FC, and this is our latest installment of the transfer news for our fantasy teams. This is Gameweek 5 preview for our fantasy EPL series. I'm joined today through Zoom by Marco, who is taking a sip of water to get himself collected because I'm starting unexpectedly. And we would just want to welcome you guys to this episode. As a quick reminder, you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, by searching Benchwarmers FC1. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching Benchwarmers FC, where you will most likely listen to this. And Marco, where can they see our videos being uploaded?
They can see it on YouTube at Benchwarmers FC TV.
Nice, man. I'm glad that you're joining me, Marco. It is a Thursday. It is the end of international break. How excited are you for EPL this weekend?
I am thrilled. It was a nice break, even though we had a 3 months break and we hated it because of the whole COVID. But this one was nice. It kind of felt like it was needed because we're getting a lot of soccer, a lot. So I'm hyped for this weekend because it's gonna be big games. So big games means big transfers and injuries and a lot to talk about when it comes to fantasy.
That's right. And there are some matches that we're going to go over. There is also the EFL deadline, which means that we might get some new additions to the Premier League, and that is going to happen tomorrow. The EFL deadline, is it's up on Friday the 16th. Today is the 15th, so by the time you hear this, it may or may not be closed. But we will highlight some players which you might want to keep on your radar just for fantasy reasons. We're not going to go into too much about what they may mean for their respective clubs and all that other stuff. We can save that for another podcast. But for fantasy reasons, there are some names, especially some exciting additions, which might happen. And I think it would be worthwhile to keep those guys on your radar. So first things first, I do want to bring up what's going to be the Gameweek 5 watch list additions. I'm not going to go much into the Benchwarmers Club this week just because of international break. It's been a while. So we're going to forego that. And instead, I have an updated list for players that we've put on the watch list and players that we've dropped. So there have been some revelations this season. This is coming off hot from what was the ribbing into United and Liverpool respectively. So there are some surprises in there. There are some teams that are really just performing well, honestly. And I think it's worth to keep that in mind. But just so that we don't get ahead of ourselves, I'm going to start with some names, Marco, and he's going to join me later on with doing some surgery if needed for his team. So very first things first, the watch list this week for Game Week 5 for the preview. The first name I have on there is Ben Chirwell. Ben Chirwell is priced at 5.5 million. I think it's gone up to 5.6 now. He's had a rise. He has 1 goal and 1 assist in his last game. It looks like he may have missed, or he may well miss the following game due to a knock he picked during international break. We also know that there was that little episode with the party they had with Sancho and ignoring the guidelines and all that other stuff. So there was a bit of drama during the break. Will that affect him or not? I'm not sure, but Chirwell is still a name that is added on to the watch list. Joining him, though, I think are going to be 2 very interesting assets to keep an eye on for the next few weeks, just because the performance they had, yes, it could be a one-off, absolutely. But I think that these 2 players have their respective reasons to be on the watch list. The first one is Jack Grillish. Grillish was having a very quiet start to the season, and it didn't look like he was going to be the talisman that Villa fans knew him to be last season. But priced at 7.1, he got 2 goals and 3 assists in a ridiculous 24-pointer against Liverpool. I think he's going to recreate that throughout the season. I think he's going to end up being the target man and basically the big player for Villa this season. So he may be worth swapping into your midfield for any of those mid-priced ranged midfielders. The next one, who is a bit cheaper, John Mcginn at 5.5. He's pretty much rewarded his faithful with back-to-back 10-point performances. At 5.5, he's definitely considered budget, and he may help you spread the funds out a little bit into your team. The next one I have here is Ollie Watkins, 5.9 million, 3 goals in his game. He's definitely considered a budget forward because he's not one of the premiums. When I say premiums, I'm thinking players like Jimenez, like Martial, like Danny Ings. I think Watkins is going to have a lot more work to do on that team, and he's definitely going to be very surprising moving forward. The last one there is Alan St Maxim. I know a lot of teams, including myself, had St Maxi on their Game Week 1 teams just because he was pretty cheap. I'm actually surprised that he's dropped a little bit. He's 5.3 million. He's had some price drops because they just haven't had the performances of late. He scored the match winner. He has a goal and an assist. So it'd be interesting to see, I guess, how he's going to perform. He definitely was kicked up and down the pitch during that match. He only managed 72 minutes, though, so that could be a worry if he's still being managed as far as his game time. But he's definitely someone to keep an eye on, especially moving forward between now and I would say game week 8 or 10. Just so that you can make a decision quickly if he's someone that you want to put in your midfield. Some of the names to be dropped, and I know this is someone that both Marco and I share. Mitchell from Crystal Palace. The bad news about Mitchell, well, I'll get to the good news. The good news is that he's been performing well, and he definitely has been a revelation for Palace fans. The bad news for Mitchell is that Crystal Palace still have Patrick Van Aanholt on their roster, and he recently tweeted out that he's back and he's feeling great. So at the expense of Mitchell, I'm pretty sure he's going to be slotted right back into that team. What that means moving forward for a transfer strategy, I'll get to that, but I really feel like this might force some teams, especially with the budget defenders in their back line, to be a bit smart about their free transfers and taking hits. The next 2 names that are being dropped from the watch list, I think Coleman and Digne are fantastic assets, and I know I spoke about them recently in a previous episode for being kind of important because they were putting in a good performance with Everton. This was also during a time when Everton has just started looking like world beaters. But basically, Pickford is looking too soft. I think that Coleman and Digne aren't going to be good picks until there's another keeper underneath the sticks, really. Just like I think even worse than De Gea, I think Pickford just looks like he's going to have some sort of a blunder every game. And he has been every game. I think for having a nickname for T-Rex hands and having mistakes in the last 3 games, it doesn't seem worthwhile to spend that much money for Coleman and Digne. The next name I have on there to drop is Rhys James. So Azpilicueta is starting again, and he's starting in that right back position. It looks like Lampard has kind of made up his mind for utilizing Zuma and Thiago Silva at his expense, at his risk, because both of those players have been a bit shaky at times, and we already saw Silva do his first blunder the very first time he started on the pitch. So either way, that still means that Rhys James is going to have limited minutes. Yes, Azpilicueta is definitely a more expensive option, but right now I think Rhys James was just a temporary cheap way into the Chelsea defense, and it's going to be no more. The next one is Zaha. I would drop Zaha from the watch list, and I actually have him on my team, and I think he might be the next one to drop because there's a really funny tweet that came out where someone tweeted at him asking him, should I buy you into my fantasy team? And he just straight up replied and said no, period. So I think that shows the attitude that Zaha has. Also, honestly, the people that got Zaha early definitely benefited from that, and they got lucky, myself included. But I think his attitude showing on the pitch, and like complaining constantly, and the fact that they don't have much possession anymore. Yes, Palace are a counterattacking team, and that definitely does benefit Zaha's style of play. But I just think that for the returns that he's going to give you at his price range, it's not worth it. And the last I guess, team member name that I'm dropping from the watch list for Game Week 5 is going to be Ricardo Pereira. He just hasn't been featuring for his team at all. Justin and Castagne have been killing it so far for Leicester City. Castagna looked fantastic during the international break with his international team. He really looked like he was solid and comfortable. So it's definitely those two spots are definitely locked in, I would see, for the foreseeable future. And I don't think Pereira is going to get any more minutes from here on out. So Gameweek 5, notes and questions. These are some important things that I wanted to note and kind of let people know what I think will be the case. What is going to be the most important way to treat Son and Kane. So really quick, Marco, do you have either of those players on your fantasy team right now?
Before I answer you that question, I do have two things I want to say about your drop, the players that we should drop. 2 seconds before we start recording, you told me to put Mitchell in my lineup, and now you're telling me I should drop him? That's fucked up.
Listen,
and if you tell me to pick between Pickford and De Gea, I picked the Pickford, even though he has T-Rex hands.
Specifically was, do I put between Mitchell and Webster? Who should I start? There was a very clear A or B.
You should have told me. You should have told me. Look, I'm actually thinking about getting rid, or I'm thinking about telling people to get rid of Mitchell instead of saying, "Hey, Marco, put him as your center, as your defense player." That is best.
Yeah, because and I'll tell you why. Because one, you told me between Webster and Mitchell. Mitchell is obviously the better pick. Anyone could tell you that. And two, if Mitchell doesn't play, which is very likely, I'll be honest with that, you will automatically have the auto sub. So you have no risk. If Mitchell plays, he will do great. If he doesn't play, then the next first sub will automatically go in. And I think I don't know who else you have on your bench, but if it's Brewster, I don't think that's such bad of a call either, because Crystal Palace don't look to be as much of an attacking threat as we thought after the first 2 game weeks.
Correct. And when it comes to Pickford, I'll give you that one for a minute. When it comes to Pickford, I still pick him over De Gea.
You still pick Pickford over De Gea?
Yeah, with the T-Rex hands and everything. With the T-Rex hands and everything. As of right now, I'd pick Pickford over De Gea.
Okay.
I feel like there was a little biases in that one.
I'm just glad. No. I mean, of course you're gonna think that, but I'm just glad we have it on recording so that at the end of the season, when one of those has more clean sheets than the other, we're gonna see.
I don't think either one will have that many. To be honest,
or if you're wrong,
I don't think. Well, look, from here until December, I'll pick Pickford once the center comes along. And depending on how situations run, depending on how the situation is going, I might update. I might update my choice.
Now it's if he's wearing a cap or if he's wearing dark or white gloves.
From here to December, I pick Pickford. Once December and the January window ends, then I'll consider it, because I don't know if you're going to be bringing in defense or anything like that, or he gets sold. I don't know. So until December, I pick Pickford. But you said the question was, do I have any of these? I'm assuming 6 players that you have on the list.
No. The question right now, because we're moving on to the questions for Game Week 5, just so we can prep. Do you have either Son or Kane on your fantasy team?
I don't have anything from everybody from Spurs.
You don't have any Spurs players?
Nope.
Okay.
Having Son bit me in the butt in week 2, and I sold him immediately, and then he scored the 3 goals. Yeah, it was a depressing morning. Believe me.
Hey, it happens. It definitely happens. Actually, that's not bad of a segue to get into our Benchwarmers FC Fantasy League right now. Overall, we have for the top 5 is we have Liverpool, managed by Kieran. In second, we have In Kepa We Trust, managed by Matthew. I'm sitting in third, and we have On with a really long team name, which I don't know what it means. And then 5th place, running it out, is Andreas. So I think 2 of those or 3 of those, including myself, have been here in the top 5. Just to check in on the rest of the bench, Josue is sitting in 6th place. Eddie is in 8th. Eric has moved up to 9th, so he's in the top 10. Nick has a little bit of a green arrow, so he's in 11th place. And I'm scrolling a little bit here.
You have to scroll for
it got messy, and Marco's sitting in a very respectable 20th for the league. Right now we have 31 people total in the league. So you're about halfway in there, just about. The point spread is actually pretty close between you and
last place,
10 places above. No, you're only 12 points away from 10th place. So it's very tight. And between like myself in third with 251 points, first place has 268. So that's a difference of 17. It's still very tight. And I'm bringing that up because anyone who's discouraged, if you think things haven't gone your way, if you feel like your picks aren't just working out, remember, this is a long-term thing. We got a lot of months left. We got a lot of incredible game weeks up ahead, ridiculous score lines. Who's going to get beat next? Is it going to be United again? Is it going to be another top 6 team? Well, we don't know. So I think it's definitely worth remembering that this is a marathon. So on to the questions. I want to address the forward line first. And this is for people that have either mid-range or premium forwards. Brewster signing for Sheffield, I think is a bit of it can be very key to a lot of teams. Brewster at 4.5. If you want to get him in early, I think that's the only thing that you should consider, because if he has a good game or two where he scores at least like 2 goals or he has some sort of a return, because he's so cheap, he's going to go up in price fast. And then he'll go from being an enabler to just being someone who sits on your bench. I think if you get him in early, he'll be both for you, and it'll be very, very beneficial because you'll be able to spread those funds out elsewhere onto your team. I have 3 other names for forwards. Watkins, I think you should wait. I think you should wait to see how he does. Yes, he had a fantastic performance against Liverpool, but I believe the sample size is very important to see how he performs in the next 2 or 3 game weeks. Mope, I absolutely hate because he is full of himself and he deserves to never play a game of football ever again. And Antonio, I think, is a great pick, actually. That one, Marco, that one is biased. Full bias, full-on bias, 100%. 110% bias.
That one, okay.
Antonio, though, I think he's a great pick. I think Antonio has gone under the radar for one, because he went down in price. He's 6.3, if I'm not mistaken, 6.3 million. And he has looked great on a West Ham team. And this West Ham team has given us some surprises. I'm not sure, again, what turned David Moyes into Prime Ferguson for staying at home. But he's been doing well. And that West Ham team has done well. So if you want Antonio, he is definitely cheaper than a 9 million forward. And it looks like he could be even an asset to loan for the long term, just because I feel like he's going to have those returns. Moving on to the next important, and I'm pretty sure this question a lot of people have. What do you do with Son? And I'm going to tell you straight up, Marco, as much as it hurts, just get him in, Son. Just get Son in. And anyone that can afford it, just get Son in. And this is the way I would go about it, actually. If you want actually my take on this, I used to have Son and I sold him because I got bamboozled by Mourinho's tactics and the special voodoo doctors that they have at Spurs to magically heal them from broken femurs.
That's right.
So that happened. I think if you have the funds and a free hit to get Son, by all means. Like, for example, if you have like I know there are a lot of teams that went budget in the beginning of the season. If you have a 7.5 midfielder and you have 2 or 3 million in the bank, just take that free hit and get Son in. I think Son is going to be a great asset moving forward. And at 9 million, he just rose to 9.1. And watching the price rises, I think it was a lot of people on Twitter, especially, and a lot of fantasy football accounts were amazed at the fact that Son had almost over 1 million transfers in the last week, and he only rose in price once, which is ridiculous because that means one of two things. either everyone who's buying him is on a wild card, or they have for some reason locked in his price, and the FPL towers are messing with us because they don't want Sun to rise. Either way, him going up by 0.1, I think that's the warning shot for everyone who is without Sun to get him in if they can. This is my con about that. If you don't have the means to get Sun in on a free hit, then don't. I think taking a hit to get in Sun, let's say you need to make 2 transfers and take a -4 just to put Sun in. Yes, he can return, but you'll need him to return right away, and that is going to be one of my points at the end. I don't think he's going to be returning like he did these last 2 matches in the first 4 game weeks, because it doesn't, for one, to me, it doesn't seem sustainable, and 2, a bit of self banter, but they're not going to play United every week, and they're definitely not going to play Southampton, who has a ridiculously high line every week. That just works against you, honestly. The fact that they're going against better teams, or better defensive teams, if I want to be specific, I think that might afford you some time to kind of bank a transfer and get Sun in. So I'm going a bit on and on about Sun and this transfer strategy. I don't want to get too much into what's going to be my last point, because I visit that again just to preface it. The next one, penalty takers. So penalty takers have been very important this season. They were a meta in the beginning of the season. They might regress. I think the league is going to adjust, and especially after the interpretation change of the law, I think the league is going to adjust the penalties and to the amount of penalties being awarded. I feel like if you have a penalty taker on your team, that penalty taker should be a good player overall first. So someone like Salah, someone like KDB, those are great players overall without penalties. I would definitely advise against building a team that has Jorginho and Barkley in it, just because they may take penalties moving forward for their teams. That could be a trap for you. Mane with COVID. I think Mane falls into a category with a lot of other players that have been diagnosed with COVID, unfortunately. Mane is a little bit different because he's definitely a proven asset, and he definitely looks great, especially for fantasy. I would say, especially with the COVID, and looking at how Pogba has been doing as well because of his performances of late after also being diagnosed with it, I would give any player that has a positive test result at least 1 or 2 weeks to watch them and then decide if you want to bring them in. Mane, for example, he may be back against Everton. I would watch that Everton match if you can, and then decide, okay, is he looking himself, or is he playing at like 70, 60%? And of course, it's of no fault to him. This is definitely something that people are just experiencing and getting used to for being infected. So I would give that some leeway. My last point, Spurs versus West Ham. And I'm addressing this game solely because the Son and Kane argument has been very hot. West Ham have only conceded 7 shots on target. And out of their first 4 games of the season, they've only conceded 4 goals. As well as they've kept blanks for both Jimmy, for Jimenez, for Raul Jimenez, and for Jamie Vardy. That, I think, speaks to the point I was just making. They're not going to play teams like a shambolic United. They're not going to play teams like a Highline Southampton every week. I think I think the West Ham game is going to be very telling for whether you bring Son in on a hit right away, or if it was a good strategy to just wait a week and bank a transfer so you can try to get him in for game week 6. Now that we finished all of those notes and questions, Marco, I do want to bring you in real quick. And if you wouldn't mind showing your team on your screen, just so you can reference it with me. I have it pulled up with me right now. If there's something that you would like to change, one thing that you think is a problem area, what do you think it should be for your starting 11?
I'm still debating. I can't. Technically, I can't. I would have to make. I have 2 free transfers.
Nice.
and I would have taken it, taking out Tierney, which is at 5.1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's in 5.4. Sorry, he's injured. He most likely not going to play until the end of October, maybe beginning of November. And then I have a 7.6 James Rodriguez. Swapping them to one for a 4.0 defender, which are very minimal. And I think there's one Wolves player that defender has been getting a couple minutes here and there. And then I would bring him in and then swap him for Son. Problem is, Son is not 9.0, is 9.1.
Yes, he's
So
9.1.
I would have to make a third adjustment or lose 4
Oh,
points.
you got priced out?
Yes, too late to make the change. So I'm still debating if I'm going to do it or not. I still have till tomorrow to figure it out.
Right.
Tomorrow, meaning Friday. If not, then I might play around with my 3 midfielders, which is Jorginho, Costa from Leeds United, and Rodriguez, and see how I can make that change for Son happen. I'm gonna play around with it, see if I can make it happen. If I can't, I'll wait until the next game, next week, because you did mention how West Ham has been playing. I'm kind of not feeling to take the risk of losing a good James player against Liverpool, and then wait for another week and then bring Son in.
Right.
So again, I'm still debating. Those are the only players that I'm thinking about changing right now. Everybody else, except for Mitchell that you said, but he could be that one that I throw in just in case. And if he doesn't play, then I'll just have somebody in the bench lined up to come in for him. So those are the only people that I'm thinking about keep moving, because everybody else I'm willing to keep. I have De Bruyne, I have Aubameyang, Vardy, Bamford, and Calvert-Lewin. So
what about? Because I think the first player that I see that I would, even though yes you may have your allegiances, the first player that I see that you may want to even consider dropping is Aubameyang.
I know, and
right now
I've actually considered it. Bro, you know me, I'm an Arsenal fan, but I also have to play with my head. And Aubameyang, as much as I love him, he is not putting in the goals yet.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I think if there's a time to drop him is now and pick him up a little bit more into the season.
Right. Especially considering they
Actually,
play City, Leicester, and United right away.
Yeah.
They don't have such a congested fixture as some of the other teams. But I'm just looking at his points return, man. 7, 5, 2, and 2.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. So, and as actually his price went down. It went from 12.0 to 11.9.
Yeah, that's the 0.1 that you're probably missing for Son.
Yep.
I would consider it. I think it would be a straight swap, and you definitely would have the banked funds. You keep Rodriguez, you keep Jorginho, which definitely paid off for you.
It did.
It paid off for you this week.
Did.
This last game week. So having that person on there might benefit you in the coming game weeks. There is a question if Jorginho is going to start every game. I've also heard, and this applies more for people that have a double up on the Liverpool premiums for defense, but we all saw what happened when Adrian was in the sticks. Yes, a lot of the I'll say it like this. Yes, all of the blame has to be shared between the defenders and the goalkeeper. I think it'd be kind of unfair to Adrian because the defenders still have work to do to prevent the freaking score to go up to like a cricket score or whatever, or even like a touchdown. My point is though, having those premiums in the back when they're not being guaranteed those clean sheets because of the goalie, I think that could also be a source of funds if you want to try to downgrade someone like Alexander-Arnold. Yes, that's a big risk. No, I'm being very clear so you don't tell me that this came back to bite you in the ass.
I'm still going to blame you.
I am not advocating for that. I am just saying that it is a possibility and a strategy that some people are considering, foregoing their Liverpool premium so they can fund specifically a premium midfielder in Human Son. So Aubameyang and Alexander-Arnold might be the people to take the fall. Honestly, if I were you, I wouldn't feel bad about dropping Aubameyang, even if it's just for the next 3 weeks and then picking him back up in case things go on their head. So this is actually pretty great because for me, the must-haves for any midfield right now, yes, KDB did not perform the last 2 weeks. He's had a bit of a stinker as far as like his output, but he is a proven fantasy asset, and I think between him and Sterling, it's just worth it to keep KDB's I guess like his assists and his productivity on the pitch.
Correct.
KDB, Salah, and Son, I think, are must-haves in your midfields. If you don't have all three of them, I would say at least do your best to have two. FOMO is going to be very, very big this season. I think the fear of missing out on a premium player just because they're doing well is going to affect for the majority of the season. And yes, I'm talking about the positives of West Ham's defending because I personally don't have Son, so it's easy for me to see that. Someone who is a Son owner might be like, okay, well, look at the 2 hauls that he's had against arguably better teams. What then? So I think it goes both ways. Some differentials though, and we'll end it on the differentials just so that we wrap up this episode so you guys can get ahead to doing your transfers. Some differentials that I've identified as far as having less than a 5% of ownership. Dallas and Ayling are on there. Leeds have shipped a good amount of goals, but the way Dallas and Ayling play, I was mentioning to Marco, they definitely function as kind of like a cheap version of Trent or a Robertson, just in the way that they have the possibility of giving you attacking returns. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying for fantasy wise, they may give you the odd assist or another during a match just because they play so high up the pitch. Yes. I think Dallas more than Ayling for that fact.
Yeah.
Souček and Bowen on West Ham, they've just been a completely different monster recently. And I think having either of those, if you're not sure who to have, I think it's worth a punt. And they can be a big differential because, again, their ownership is very low. I have Pulisic on here. Because his ownership is 3%, if I'm not mistaken, and he isn't nailed. He's not exactly returning just yet, but he is being ruled in for the next matches, along with Ziyech, and I forget what was their other signing on the right side. There's another signing on the right side that I don't remember. I think it was just because of Havertz. I may be confusing the name, but definitely Ziyech and Pulisic being back soon. If you want to get them in early, they'll probably rise pretty quickly. And the last one, again, I don't know why I'm being drawn so much to Antonio, but I feel like Antonio might be that kind of like ghost buy in the next few weeks, someone who's going to perform well. As I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, there are some players that are rumored to be joining from the EFL. And although the deadline is tomorrow, by the time you listen to this, the deadline might be closed for the local transfers. And some of the players that may look likely to join, I think the more exciting ones are going to be Benrahma to West Ham. If I'm not mistaken, I think his medical was rumored to go ahead. There is also the possibility of Ismaila Sarr joining United. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to happen anytime soon. But again, these switches might be possible. There are some other rumors and happenings involving the transfer of Nathaniel Klein. Nathaniel Klein might go to Palace as well. So some of the other names that have come up are Saliba could actually join Brentford or Watford on loan. Again, this is a rumor. and it's definitely nothing set in stone. At least for myself, I don't like believing any transfer rumors until you see the player with holding up the shirt on Instagram or on Twitter. But that could be not very much an issue because I think there are better defensive assets if you're looking at Arsenal, but definitely them losing a defensive prospect will at least end some of the guesswork for who's going to start, and it might nail some players on, so you could be a bit more confident on making those signings to your team if you're interested in Arsenal center backs or fullbacks. Again, Ismail Yassar, the link with United, I'm not sure if that's going to go ahead. There is some rumors of Todd Cantwell trying to attract a move back to the Premier League. Cantwell, if we all remember last season, was definitely a startlet in the beginning of the season. He was a budget pick for the majority of, I guess I would say, the halfway point. He was on fire for those few game weeks. If you had him, and then the people that brought him in, it was just too late. So they definitely got all the duds afterwards. So those are basically the four that I would bring up that are the ones to look out for. Said Benrahma to leave Brentford for West Ham. Cantwell with his rumor to go to Leeds, possibly. The transfer of Ismail Yassar is probably the one that holds the least amount of water. And then there is a player like Saliba who is rumored to leave soon. We're going to probably look at some new names come the weekend once the transfer deadline closes on Friday. But again, if there's anyone that's worth looking at or considering, especially for our fantasy teams, because most likely there will be some budget players, we'll make sure to include those next week on our episode. So that's all that I have for this game week 5. If you have any questions, if you want us to rate your teams, we're going to start doing those. So the post will be up before game week 5 so that you guys can, before game week 6. The post will be up before game week 6 so that you guys can all send in your teams. And then we'll do some analysis and rating for them for the next week. This was a kind of a rough week to do it with the international break and all. But now, thankfully, that's done. We're going to have 3 full weeks of Champions League. We're going to have the domestic leagues. We're going to have a bunch of stuff going on. We're going to have Everton, Liverpool. There's going to be, I think, United, Arsenal as well the next 3 months. And a bunch of other international games as well, which don't have to do with fantasy, but it's just going to be, I think, an awesome time for league football. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Marco, before we sign off?
If I lose points, I'm blaming it on you.
There's no way. There's no way in hell. Because I have made it my business this season to never, ever sanction any changes. I'm just giving my thoughts. These are my own. If you decide to listen to them and then act on it, that's on you. But for the most part, I think a lot of teams have been doing well. The Fantasy League has been doing well. So again, thank you to everyone who's been participating in our Benchwarmers Fantasy League. Again, the winner, the person in top spot come May, will get a cool prize from us. So we'll be in touch for that at the end of the season. Other than trying to guilt me and shame me, Marco, if that's all for today, we'll keep this one short and sweet like always. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. And again, just a reminder, you can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter by searching Benchwarmers FC1. And you can also listen to us where you probably are listening to this episode on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching Benchwarmers FC. And Marco, you can also watch Marco berate me for this fantasy episode and try to blame me for his misgivings. On what platform again?
It's always your fault on YouTube at Benchwarmers FC TV.
I hope that you give me. I hope the converse also applies. That if you do well, you credit it to me.
No, that was all my. That was all up here.
Of course.
And when I say up here, I mean up here.
I feel just like a manager because if it all goes wrong, it's my fault, and if it all goes right, it was my genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you on the next week. Peace.